Please be seated.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Mr. Dustin.
Mr. Dustin, have a seat. You're still under oath, I'll remind you. And Mr. Evans is correct. I didn't say good morning. I said good morning to all of you. Good to see you all. Begin your examination, please.
Thank you, Judge. All right, Mr. Dustin, when we left off yesterday, we were finishing up some foundational elements for the 3D scanning process that you described for the jury.
Yes.
And during the evening break, you informed me that there was something you wanted to correct in terms of your testimony yesterday. I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that now.
Yes, sir. As I was thinking about everything I had told you all yesterday, I think I actually made an error when I was speaking about the speed of light. So I think I said something about something to the effect of 300 kilometers per hour. It's actually 300 kilometers per second.
Okay. And that bothered you enough that you asked for an opportunity to correct that in front of the jury. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, having done that now, I want to continue on with the foundational elements for the 3D scans that were done in this particular case. And I want to show you some exhibits. 295. I don't know if this was a previous motion. I'm just going to put it in the record. I put it on the record from last time. I can find out from Brian if you want. Okay. This is 653. This is going to be the courtroom. This is the original scan. Yeah, I just didn't want to separate. I'm not going to use that, but that's the Staley's courtroom in Cobb.
You're not using this.
No, but I'm going to make it part of the record.
You're not tendering anything else. Piece of that is just demonstrative.
Correct. But I am tendering. with a couple pieces of evidence. While he looks at that, I'm going to show you what's now been marked as State's Exhibit 295. You were asked at some point to do some scanning in this particular case, correct?
Yes, sir, that's
Okay.
correct.
And looking at 295, this is tendered in evidence at a prior hearing. Can you confirm that this hard drive contains the original scans that you initially did pertinent to this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and in fact, you signed and initialed it so that you would recognize this hard drive when you came to court, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And in addition to that, I asked you to scan portions of Judge Staley's courtroom up in Cobb County so we can demonstrate the accuracy of the software to her, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I believe the thumb drive that's included there,
I don't think it's that one.
you don't think it's this one? Do you think that's included on the hard
No,
drive?
it's actually on another,
Okay.
on the black thumb drive with the
Black
red.
thumb drive. Okay. Then I'm gonna take that out and I'm gonna tender States 295 just to make it part of the record.
Okay.
And then, Mr. Phillips, I'm gonna bag this separately, the blue thumb drive, because I'm removing it from 295. These are fair and accurate,
Yes, sir.
original scans that you produced in this
Yes, sir,
particular
that's
case.
correct.
Okay. Tender States 295.
Any objection?
In addition to the previous objections that we've made to this piece of evidence, Judge, I would object to it being tendered into evidence. My understanding was that these scans were to be used as a demonstrative aid, and so I would object to them going into evidence. I obviously don't have a problem with them, subject to our previous objections being marked for identification purposes, but as far as them going into evidence, that's my objection, because they are demonstrative aids. And that's been the state's position all along.
Under Georgia law, demonstrative aids do go into evidence. There may be some question about whether they go out with the jury, and we can discuss that at a later point, but I think it's appropriate to make them, to actually tender them into evidence and make them evidence in the case.
We'll put them into evidence. Okay.
No.
It's all from the same time. I just thought that it's the same scan. All right, let's start with a couple of items while he looks at an exhibit. This is State's Exhibit 653, which is a package. It contains 3 items, but he's looking at one of those items now. So I'm going to start with 2 of the items to speed things along. The first thing that we have here is a scan disk thumb drive. Does that have your name and initials on it?
It does.
Okay, and what does the scan disk thumb drive contain in 653?
That should contain the scans of the courtroom.
Okay, scans of this very courtroom so we can demonstrate the accuracy of the 3D scanner, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you've confirmed, looking at this, that this is a fair and accurate 3D scan of the courtroom that we're all in right now so that we can show how the 3D scanner works.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And then this hard drive contains some specific scans that are pertinent to this case, some areas of interest that we asked you to scan as part of your work on this case, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And does this contain fair and accurate 3D scans, this hard drive that you prepared through processing this particular case?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And looking at these 2 items, would showing these items to the jury demonstrate the orientation and spatial proximity of the 3-dimensional crime scene mapping that you did in this particular case?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And it would assist you in explaining to the jury spatial proximity and orientation in terms of the 3D scanning of the items that you performed in this case.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. I'm going to tender these first two portions of 653 as demonstrative evidence at this point. You done with that? Okay. Then let's do this before I do that. There's a third scan disc that does not have a marker on it, but this is something that you created from the actual hard drive in anticipation of your testimony today, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Is there a duplicate scan of the interior of the Tucson that's contained on this scan disc that is not marked?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
With the addition of what we call some pinpoints to let you move around more quickly to speed things along for the jury. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And similar to these other two pieces of evidence, would it help you to demonstrate spatial proximity and orientation if you were allowed to display what's been put on this scan disc from the actual hard drive of the interior of the vehicle?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Tender state 653, which includes these three items as demonstrative evidence.
Commissioner Waddell, with regards to, good morning, Mr. Weston.
Good morning, how are you, Mr.
How are you doing? How are you?
Well,
With regards to 653, Ms. Evans asked you if it was a fair and accurate copy, or this is the original that you created, right?
that's correct, yes,
So
sir.
this is the original second project. Can I call it the second project? You did two different sets of scans, correct?
That's correct.
So this is the original of the second project in October of this year?
That's correct.
Okay. And you were asked if this would assist in demonstrating the accuracy of the scans that you did.
I think the question was the spatial relationship, if I recall.
The spatial relationship.
I believe so.
And how do you get the information regarding the spatial relationship between objects?
Well, these are all 3D data points, all right? And so they're positioned in proximity to each other.
Okay. And who provides you with information about the location of objects within the scene?
The scene was the object, the vehicle, the car seat, those were all placed. I did nothing with those.
So you certainly can't vouch for the accuracy of the placement of these objects, right?
I had nothing to do with locating them.
Okay. And did you create a model, an animated model of a person?
No. The model is not animated. It's just a model.
Just a model.
Yes, sir.
Did you create a model of a person?
I did.
And is that person supposed to represent Ross Harris?
Approximately, yes, sir.
And who provided you with the information to create that model?
Talking about in this project,
Yes.
I believe that I received the height from, I believe it was ADA Evans.
Just general dimensions, body type, that sort of thing, did you ever?
No.
So just height.
Height, color, approximate color of clothing, and the fact he was a Caucasian male brunette.
And the model, does the model appear anywhere in your scans?
It does.
It does, okay. And how did you decide where to place the model within your scan?
Mr. Rodriguez, I'm not planning on going into the Home Depot scans if that will assist you, which means the model will be displayed at least on direct. If you want to do that on cross, you can.
But all of that is on the piece
It's
of
all on
evidence?
it, yeah.
Okay, well, so who decided where to place the model in relationship to the house and the rest?
Yes, so Detective Grimstead was with me when I located that character, and he told me that looked like that was approximately where he would be.
Okay. And what about the position of the model in relationship to the vehicle?
That's actually what I mean.
I see.
Yes,
So,
sir.
As far as the direction that the model was facing, that information was provided to you by Detective Grimstead.
I placed the model. Detective Grimstead okayed it.
What other sources of information, if any, were provided to you to verify the accuracy of positioning of objects such as the model, the vehicle, the car seat, items within the vehicle?
Judge, I'm going to object. I mean, my questioning was foundational elements. I think this might be subject for cross-examination, but it's not proper for voir dire as to the foundation of the scans, especially since I'll announce to the court, I don't plan on going into the Home Depot scan where the figure is. If they want to go into it, that's fine, but they'll need to do it on cross.
Your Honor, if they don't plan to go into the Home Depot scans on direct, then I would submit that shouldn't be on the piece of evidence that they are tendering, or the demonstrative aid that they're tendering, because it is on this exhibit that they're tendering is why I'm asking these questions. I believe it is proper for foundation because the testimony of the expert was that they were fair and accurate representations. The sources of information, therefore, affect the fairness and the accuracy of those representations.
I'm going to sustain the state's objection.
You can't vouch for the accuracy of any source of information that was provided to you by someone else. You're simply saying that the scan you created is fair and accurate based on the information you were provided. Correct?
Yes.
I believe there's a tender before the court that says the defense.
I'm sorry, Judge, it's the same objection.
Same rule, allowed of objection. Predicated on the state's representations.
I think this will be easier if we allow you to come to the laptop, which keeps going into sleep mode, so we'll hope that that doesn't happen during our presentation. I will ask you to speak up as I'm speaking up now, as we do this demonstration. 1 second. All right, now that the laptop is up, we've loaded some software on here that will allow you to display the 3D scans in question in this case. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, I want to start with the scan is going to be marked and identified as a scan of this very courtroom. And the reason I want you to start here is I want to demonstrate the accuracy of the 3D scanner. Would you be able to bring that up on this laptop so we could show it to the jury?
Yes.
While the witness is doing that, Judge, would it be possible to tilt the Mondo big screen a little bit so that Mr. Harris could see?
I'll tilt it slightly. Perhaps you could switch seats.
We'd all like to see it.
This is about as far as I can move it back, and I don't want to tilt it so much that the jurors can't see it. So I don't have any objection to y'all moving around the courtroom.
There's wheels on it, we can move it back.
This is about as far back as it can go. Can everybody see? All right, Mr. Dustin, let's bring up that first scan of the courtroom using your software so we can demonstrate how it works and what we can do in a tangible way so that the jury can see exactly how the process works.
Yes, sir.
And I'll ask you some foundational questions as you do that. Once you bring up a scan scene, are you able to, I'm going to use the term, fly around within that scene and reposition yourself in different areas so that you can see different vantage points?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. So as this populates, why don't you explain first what the jury's going to see after the 3D scan of this courtroom is brought up?
Yes, sir. So what we'll see is these are 3D laser scans that were captured here in this very courtroom. Some items may have been moved around. So for instance, the podium, I don't know if the Mondo pad was here or not. But you will be able to see, effectively, spatially, be able to move around throughout this courtroom.
Okay, so when it's displayed now on this scan disc that you just inserted, that's actually the 3D scan of the interior of this courtroom that was done during jury selection prior to the seating of this jury. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Can you please maneuver, you have something there that you called it the space mouse, and I kind of joked with you, but it actually is called the space mouse, correct?
It is, yes, sir.
Okay. Using that space mouse, can you please maneuver inside the courtroom to bring us down inside so we can show the jury how this 3D scanning software works?
Yes, sir.
All right, just pause there for a second, and why don't you just describe for the jury what we have here?
So it's a view, because these are 3D data points, so we can move anywhere in 3D space. Anywhere in 3D space, even inside of objects if you wanted to. And so what we have is I've located the position of the camera, if you will, approximately in front of this desk podium here.
Okay, and it's obviously at a raised height. Can you actually lower it down a little bit too so we can get a different vantage point? Now, how was this captured? What was the process that was used to actually get this 3D laser scan of the interior of the courtroom?
Sure. So scanner was positioned around the courtroom in various locations. I believe there were at least 2 captured from the judge's bench, 1 from the witness stand, possibly 1 or 2 from the jury box, and then in other various places within this room.
Is there a way to pull up so you can actually show the various points where the 3D scanner was placed during the scanning process?
Yes, sir.
What are these gray boxes, grayscale boxes that are now shown to the jury?
Those are the locations of the scan. The scan, we call it the scan head, which is just the scanner device that I showed you yesterday.
And explain to the jury why it is that you had to, we had to move the scanner to different locations. You kind of touched on that a little bit yesterday, but articulate for that for the jury now.
Sure, because it's what we call the line of sight device, meaning you associate sight with it, but it's line of sight, meaning if the scanner head is in a location and there's a void on the other side of it, then you need to locate the scanner on that other side to be able to capture that data.
You had talked a little bit about some of the limitations of the software, something called noise. Are you familiar with that term?
I am, yes.
And why don't you explain to the jury in what situation might you see something that we refer to as noise, and explain what that is?
Sure. So what noise is, what we call, it's actually something called stray noise. And what stray noise is, it's when the beam on the laser actually has a diameter. If I remember correctly, it's about 2.4 millimeters in diameter. And so what happens with that, as that beam is rotated, sometimes the beam is actually in contact with 2 objects at the same time. So if I may use my laser pointer, assuming my batteries are good. So if the laser scanner head, say, was in this position, sometimes what will happen is the beam is actually touching 2 places at one time. Let me think if I can do this a better way. So the beam is actually touching on the carpet, but it can actually also be touching on another surface. So there are times where you can see what's called stray noise in between that. It's only because the hardware can actually detect in that same beam length, the beam line of sight, it can detect this point and that point. So there's some filtering that's applied to the software to remove some of that.
Just to demonstrate, we noticed a little bit of noise yesterday when we were maneuvering through this around our court reporter's table. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Would you be able to maneuver to a better vantage point so we could just show what that might look like and explain?
So for instance, in this particular area here, you can see where there's a small amount of noise that isn't necessarily associated with any particular object. and it just has to do with the technology.
Before we leave the well of the courtroom, which is basically the 3D scan of where I'm standing, can you show, you talked yesterday about the limitation that might occur in terms of
The
3D scans of the void
Yes.
directly
So,
below?
if you notice as I move, you'll notice that the software automatically depopulates so that you can move. There are probably, right now it's displaying about 224 million data points. And so when you move the software, it does something we call derez, so that it just lowers the resolution slightly so that you can move to another location without it having to perform slowly.
Can you maneuver so that we can get a vantage point from the jury box just to show how you're able to move within a scene that's being scanned? That's from the jury box, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And how about from the witness stand?
Yes, sir, that's what it looks like from the witness stand.
And just to show a little bit further, how about over here from this rough vantage point? Could you move us there and demonstrate what the view might look like? Okay. Now, this process that you've just described, you can take out the grayscale boxes, by the way, the scanners. This process that you've just described and demonstrated that can be done in a scene such as an interior, can this also be done in exterior scenes as well?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, and just to show an example, were you asked in this case, you were asked to do the Home Depot, but we're not going to do that parking lot since we have
Yes,
video of it, but were you asked to go back to Acres Mill and do some scanning there?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Before you did some scanning at Acres Mill, were you given access by Cobb Police to a Hyundai Tucson so that you could scan the interior and exterior of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you use a similar scanning process in terms of the interior and exterior of the vehicle, or did you use two different types of scanning devices?
On the initial scans, we only used the X330 originally, and so we had done some scans of the vehicle. And yes.
When you initially went out to the Acres Mill location, obviously the vehicle wasn't there at that time, but did you still see the markings where the tires were? We had some testimony from Detective Shumpert that he had made some marks where the tires were for future dates.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And is that scan, the Acres Mill location, is that included on this hard drive?
I believe it is, yes, sir.
Let's bring down the courtroom then, since we've demonstrated that. You can just maybe leave it minimized, however you want to do it. And then I'm going to hand you the hard drive, and I want to go next to that exterior scene, just to show the jury how that 3D software works in a bigger area. I'm going to get you to pause there before we do anything, and I'll just let's let it populate fully. It sometimes takes a little while for the software to get all the data points and put them together so that we can see them correct.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. You actually performed the exterior scans for the Acres Mill location at our request, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And how does it compare an outdoor scene versus having to scan something like the interior of the courtroom? Is the process the same?
The process is the same, yes, sir?
Does it sometimes take a little more time?
Yes, sir, depends upon if there are obstructions in the way or
Okay. And so obviously, we can't see the entirety of what's around this scene. You didn't scan the entirety of Acres Mill. You were asked to scan a particular location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And the vehicle that's here, is this the same vehicle that you've scanned on several occasions at this point?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. And having scanned that vehicle, were you able to place that in the scene based on where the tire markings are as you saw them when you scanned the initial scene?
Yes, sir. And in addition, in placing this vehicle in this particular scene, Detective Grinstead had access to the crime scene photographs, which I did not have at that point, and at least I don't believe I had. And then I placed the vehicle in the location as indicated in the scene photographs, and also within the painted marks on the roadway that were marked by Mr. Shumpert.
You have a fly-through feature for this particular scene, do you not?
Yes, sir.
Can you please demonstrate that for the jury?
Sure. So I have something. There's something called vantage points or viewpoints that you can create in the software that allow you to go back to that point at a later time. And so we can step through that. And then this is the same methodology that you use for generating what we call a fly-through video. So there's another plugin for the software that allows you to connect these points and then create a movie, if you will, a video.
And can you show that video associated with this one? You can move your cursor to the side if you want. This was created from the raw 3D scans that you took from Acres Mill after the crime, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Now, I want to ask you about this portion. Is there a capability to use some sort of box to actually remove portions of the scan so that you can see things that would otherwise be obstructed?
Yes, sir. So there's a device called, they just call it a clipping box. And what this clipping box does is you can position it over points of the 3D laser scan, and then you can effectively hide those areas. So it doesn't take them out. It's a temporary feature to allow you to, so for instance, to see through walls. So if we had taken the courtroom and we wanted to, we could have taken off the ceiling and just looked down inside of it if we wanted to.
It doesn't actually disappear from the scan. It just gives the ability to see inside things that might otherwise be obstructed.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Can we go back to your initial scan of Acres Mill? I want to ask you about certain points of that location. When you were out at that location, can you drop me down to the vehicle? And I want to look over here at this location where the tree is. What is this area that was scanned here that can be seen from the vehicle? What is this?
That's a grassy area with a tree and looks like mulch around the base.
Okay. I want to come back to the side of the vehicle towards where the door is open. You scanned pavement down here below the vehicle, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Why don't we turn around from that vantage point? Is there a sidewalk just to the past that pavement?
There is.
And there's also a little berm here as well, all within sight distance of this vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. So this pavement area is not the only area around here. There's actually other areas immediately surrounding the vehicle.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
From this vantage point, turn us back around to that grassy area and that tree, please. That's in sight distance from the driver's side of the vehicle, correct?
Judge, I'm going to object to leading. I don't have a problem with questions to direct the witness to look at different items, but to simply start pointing out and testifying as to what this aid shows, I would ask that that come from the witness stand, please.
Let me re-ask the question. What can be seen from this vantage point through the 3D scan?
You can see the curving area, you can see the base of the tree, you can see the wall. There's actually an electrical box, a couple of electrical boxes back here.
Can you spin around and look towards the restaurant that's immediately behind the vehicle from that same location? And back to the left a little bit. I want to go immediately to the rear. Sorry. Turn it this way. A little more. Stop there. Is there also a sidewalk and some grassy area just immediately behind the vehicle that was observed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you go a little bit more to the left? And then back around so we can see the vehicle. And this, what is this that was scanned over here on the left side?
That's the sidewalk.
Okay. All right. I want to talk a little bit more about the interior of the vehicle. At some point, in fact recently, were you asked to come down to Glenn County and were you given access to the Hyundai Tucson with Detective Grimstead so that you could scan the interior of that vehicle?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And that occurred on October 15th and 16th of this year, is that correct?
I have to check my notes for the specific dates, but
A
approximately.
couple weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
And when you scanned that vehicle, was a car seat returned to the vehicle and were measurements, did you observe measurements being taken?
I observed measurements being taken. I didn't observe the measurements themselves.
Who placed that car seat back in the vehicle for that scan?
Detective Grimstead.
And you were actually present while that was occurring, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
What devices were used to scan that vehicle?
There were two devices used. We used the X330, which is the blue box on the tripod that I showed you. And then I also used the hand scanner to capture the interior of the vehicle.
If you will, step up close to the jury so we don't have to shut that down. Looking at states 902, do you recognize that as being the vehicle that you were asked to go out and rescan with Detective Grimstead?
Yes, sir.
And 903 is the car seat, correct?
Yes, sir.
For some of these photos that were displayed, this is 904, we can see some black and white images that are on the interior of some stickers.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain for the jury why we have the stickers in there? What's the purpose of those in terms of the laser scan?
Sure. So with the hand scanner, you use what we call targets. And so what you do with the targets is you open up the software, and so because you have more than one scan. So the way that you align them or register them together is you one scan on one panel or plane, if you will, of the software, and then on the other plane or panel, then you view the other scan. What you do is you find the common points. So you determine where those common points are, and that's what we use those fairly high contrast targets. And then there's also there are some that actually have a code on them. It's a photogrammetry code, so that the software can identify that, and it will give it a number.
Looking at states 906 by way of example, you can see some of those sticker discs that were placed inside the vehicle to help with the scanning process. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And in addition to the car seat that Detective Grimstead placed in the vehicle, was a life-size doll that placed in the car seat as well.
Yes, sir.
This is State's Exhibit 907. A photograph of the interior of that vehicle with,
Yes, sir.
with the doll and with the car seat. that you scanned.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
908 actually shows a little bit better those discs, the black and white discs you gave testimony about.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And who's that handsome gentleman in States 910?
That would be, well, I don't know about handsome. The gentleman in the photograph is myself using the hand scanner.
And that's the hand scanner that you actually showed the jury yesterday for smaller enclosed spaces.
Yes, sir, it's the same device.
Similarly, 911, looking at 911,
Yes, sir, that's correct.
you're depicted at 911 going through this hand scanner process, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is not the first time that you scanned this vehicle, correct?
It is not.
We asked you to come down and rescan it. Did you do that free of charge?
I did.
Looking at States 913, was I also present there with you and Detective Grimstead?
You were.
Okay. And looking at 913, did we bring digital images, from the actual processing, initial processing of the car, so we could confirm?
I believe that's where the photographs were from, yes, sir. There were photographs on your computer.
And then I want to ask you about States 914 and 915. Describe for the jury what's depicted in 914 and 915.
Yes, sir. So that's locating the X330 scan, the blue one, locating it in the driver's seat position. And so the way that we located that device was I sat down in the driver's seat. Detective Grimstead he actually used tape, so he would position himself on the passenger side and he would place a mark, a piece of tape, and then he would go to the driver's side, again placing a piece of tape, and he did that a couple of times so that he could get my eye level properly, I don't want to say documented, but so that he would know what my eye level would be. And then he also measured from the headrest to effectively where my glasses or my eyes would be.
And I want to ask you, how tall are you?
6'3", pretty sure.
Okay. And if there was testimony that the defendant is 6'2", about an inch apart from each other?
Yes, sir, that'd be correct.
Okay. And then what part of the actual scanner is where the laser actually comes from? The blue part or the center part?
Correct. So if you recall from yesterday, so there's a mirror located in the center of the scanner, and then as the mirror rotates, then the laser beam is projected onto the environment, and then it also captures color information.
All right. Let's go back to your hard drive, and I want to ask you about the interior scans of this vehicle from a few weeks ago.
Freestyle scans with
Let's do freestyle.
you want to do those off that other thumb drive?
Let's do this first, and then we'll come to the thumb drive. Actually, can you go to exterior vehicle first? We'll start out and move in. As we let this populate, why don't you describe what we have scanned here?
Right, so what we have is, we have the exterior of the vehicle that was scanned approximately 2 weeks ago, and then we have the interior of the vehicle, which was scanned with the hand scanner.
Okay. And are you able, just with our larger crime scene, or our larger 3D mapping, to maneuver around this vehicle as well?
Yes, sir.
If you will, let's just take a lap around the vehicle. And describe what issue we have here with the windows.
Sure. So glass is a problem, like I mentioned yesterday. One of the issues you have with glass is that the laser not only slows down, so any distance measurement that's captured through the glass is going to have an error to it. That because of the time calculations, it's going to be in the wrong spot. The other thing is you end up with reflection and refraction from it. So you're going to have reflected noise that bounces off the glass. And so typically what we will do is there are several methods you could do. You could actually put paper over the glass if you needed to actually detect that surface. You could also spray it with like baby powder if you wanted to actually be able to detect that glass surface. The problem with that is now, either way, the glass is obstructed, and so the easiest or best way to do it is just to remove the glass in its entirety.
Okay. So other than you having removed the glass to get rid of some of those issues, this is an accurate 3D scan of the vehicle, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you're certainly not doing that to suggest that there was no glass in the vehicle?
Absolutely not.
All right. If you could, let's go down a little closer to the vehicle on the passenger side, and then take us all the way around the front of the vehicle to the driver's side as well. All right. And are you able to move in closer so that we can get almost within the door frame of the vehicle? Okay. And you have here the black and white markers that the jury's looked at, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
What's the purpose of this yellow and black item that you have here?
It's just a photographic reference scale so that you could use it to just check the accuracy of the scan.
I want to ask you about something else that we asked you to do before we get to our final scan, where you asked to look at actual crime scene photos from the initial processing of the vehicle and compare them to certain points in your scans to confirm the accuracy of the placement of the seat.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I'm going to hand you the scan disc, the third thumb drive, and if you will, go ahead and bring that up. And for our records, this actually contains the same data that's on the hard drive, just with some pinpoints, correct?
Points added, correct.
Why don't you describe for the jury what pinpoints are and why we use pinpoints?
Right. Let me try to multitask for you. So it's the same scenario that we would use for creating videos. So, as an example, when we traveled around the area by Uncle Mattio's, I had created viewpoints, and these are predefined viewpoints. So, historically, the way we used them in the software, you could use them for, say, you have a witness that said they were standing on a certain location. You could create a viewpoint, and you can actually name it for that particular witness or expert or whatever.
All right. If you will, bring that copy of that scan up. All right, bring us down closer and describe what this 3D scan is that's included on ScanDisk.
So these are the scans that were captured with the hand scanner. So this is the triangular looking device that's connected to the tablet, and so this is the data that was captured from that.
So by way of example, the photo 9/11 of you holding that device, this is the net result of that is the scans of the interior of the vehicle, correct?
That's correct.
Can you move down a little bit closer so we can see the interior of the vehicle below the roof line? Now, during this process, we asked you to look at specific crime scene photos. And I'm going to, for the record, show the jury these 4 additional photos that I had Detective Grimstead give testimony about yesterday from the initial processing of the vehicle. Where you asked to see if you could use your 3D scanner and get to the approximate location of these and make pinpoints so we could compare the
Yes.
positioning of the vehicle
Yes, sir, that's correct.
and the positioning of the car seat to these actual photos.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So I'm going to start with states 925. Looking at 925, can you please go to that pinpoint so we can do a comparison right here in the courtroom?
You don't have the number of photos.
I want to say it's 36. Do we have a little bit of, well, let me ask you, what is this area right here?
So those areas are voids where the hand scanner did not capture. So when I did this scan, I was trying to capture the general proximity of that car seat and the back seat.
I want to ask you some specifics about what's been marked as State's Exhibit 925, photograph of the side of that car seat, taken before the car seat was ever removed. And I want to ask you about some seams of the car seat. Did the 3D scanning process actually capture the seams of the car seat?
Captured the seam, well, captured the features of the car seat and also the seams of the seat itself, the vehicle seat.
So, this seam right here,
Yes, sir.
point that out so the jury can see. All right. Did your 3D scanner capture the buckles?
Yes, sir.
Point that out for the jury. On your demonstrative aid.
You're talking about the seat belt buckles?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
As I displayed, states 925. Does that also include a scan of the actual buckle that was used to affix the car seat to that center bench?
Talking about this here?
Yeah, point that out for the jury.
Yes, sir.
And I know your pinpoint was just trying to get to the best location that you could. If we're not saying it's precisely at the angle, but it's pretty close. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you also, this is very dark, but just by way of example, do you see where the base of the car, just point out where the base of the car seat protrudes a little from that seat?
Sure. So you can see from this particular angle that the base of the car seat extends over the edge of the vehicle's seat.
And is that depicted, and was that captured in your 3D scan
Yes, sir.
when that car seat was placed by Detective Grimstead?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, let's go to another pinpoint. Let me show you states 926. I think these are consecutive in the order that you have them, but let's find out. Go to your image 49. Okay, try that. All right, so I'm now going to show the jury states 926. Your second pinpoint, which you've labeled as 68, is that a pinpoint that captures that area?
Relatively closely, yes, sir.
two more pinpoints. Were you also able to look at the actual crime scene photos from back from 2014, before the crime scene, before the car seat was removed, and make a pinpoint that's consistent with the vantage point that the 3D scanner caught, as depicted in States 927?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And what number do you have for that one?
That's 49.
So your 49 is a rough approximation of the vantage point from 927, correct?
I believe so. Let me check the other first. Yeah.
And let me ask you while we're over here, do you see the seam of the seat that's depicted in 927 that I'm pointing at here?
Yes, sir.
Was that captured by the 3D scan that you did just a couple
Yes,
weeks
so
ago?
the seam, this diagonal seam in the seat material, it was captured by the laser scanner. The car seat was captured.
And on this side of the vehicle as well, did you observe that the car seat actually was a little bit big for the seat? It protruded over the seat?
Right, so it extends over the edge of the seat.
Okay. And is that captured here in this 3D scan as well?
Yes, sir, it is.
Do you see that in States Exhibit 927?
Yes, sir, I do.
And finally, just to confirm the placement of the seat. Again, this isn't we're not certain that this is a precise angle or as
It
close
is
as we
not.
could get.
Correct, this is close as we could get.
You could actually maneuver in a little bit using your space mouse if you needed to.
Yes, sir.
And of course, the defense could ask you to do that too.
Yes, sir.
Do you also see a slight gap in States 927 that was captured in this photograph?
Yes, sir, I see this gap right here.
Okay, and point that out where that is so we can confirm that for the jury. Just a slight gap. Your 3D scanner caught that as well after Grimstead placed that seat, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's one other crime scene photo from before the seat was ever removed in 2014. You've seen States Exhibit 928, correct?
Yes, sir, I have.
And were you asked by me, by the way, there's some sunglasses in here, correct?
There are sunglasses in front.
There's no sunglasses for your scanning, correct?
They are not.
Okay.
They are not.
Were you asked to make a pinpoint that's consistent with this vantage point from your 3D scans of the interior of the vehicle to confirm the placement of the seat?
Yes, sir.
And what number do you have for yours so we can make
That
it?
was image 50.
Your image 50, and looking at 928,
Yes, sir.
do you see that as being?
Yes, sir. So features that I would look for, I would look at, so for instance, the lower portion of the seat, and then also even things like the decals on the side. I would look for the intersection between the seat seam and the location of that particular decal.
Okay. Having now compared your pinpoints from this exhibit to those 4 crime scene photos that show the base of the seat and where it was positioned on the bench. I now want to ask you about the scan of the interior of the vehicle that was done from the driver's seat.
Yes, sir.
When you use the Faro 3D scanner, in addition to taking a laser scan, does it also take a panoramic photograph?
It does, when you enable it, yes, sir.
And describe how that process works, please.
Sure, so what happens is as the scanner head rotates, like I explained yesterday, so the mirror angles, and then it will capture a photo, angles, capture a photo, and it does a series of 85 photographs. And it does not use the photographs that are directly below it. I don't remember if the newest version actually captures photos of itself or not. I'd have to look at that.
Okay. I'll show you what's already been marked tendered and admitted as states 916. Do you recognize this as being a color panoramic image that was captured from the placement of the Faro scanner as depicted in, by way of example, 915 in the driver's side seat?
Yes, sir.
916 is that panoramic image, is that correct?
Okay, well, sure. Yeah.
And then I'm showing you now, State's Exhibit 930. Is 930 a snapshot of one vantage point captured by the 3D Faro scanner that was used in the driver's side of the seat?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it's a fair and accurate depiction that's included in 916, but just a snapshot of the interior of the vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And all of this is included on the information that was put on the hard drive, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You had talked about some software that you developed and invented. Can you describe for the jury your software?
Well, it's an iPad app. It's basically, we have developed it so that you can take a look at that panoramic image, and then as you use the iPad, as you rotate, then you can view that image using the accelerometer effectively as if you are in that position.
And can you describe, what's the name of your software that you invented?
It's iViewer 360.
And do you have that iViewer 360 software here in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And the image that's included on this hard drive, can that be played using your iPad and streamed to this Mondo pad so that the jury can see
Yes,
the
sir.
360 view of the interior of the vehicle from that position in the driver's seat?
Yes, sir.
Let's go to that now. And by the way, is States 930 included on that panoramic scan?
Yes, sir.
Tender 930.
Judge, I'm going to object at this time. As far as doing a demonstration that we haven't seen before, I would like an opportunity outside the presence of the jury to know what is about to be demonstrated.
Judge, they have seen this before. They saw it in Cobb County during our motions hearing. It's the same demonstration.
Judge, I'm going to ask to be heard outside the presence of the jury, please.
Please, gentlemen, step out for just a moment.
That's all right.
One at a time, ladies. Men and women, right?
Watch
Well,
step
I can
one.
stretch out toward the middle, but I'll try not to.
Watch step one down first. Please be seated.
Mr. Sharon.
I got you.
Lisa.
Judge, there was really no foundation laid for what was about to be displayed other than he's created an application invented some software and created an application, and then was about to do some sort of live in-court demonstration of some sort. He may have done something in Cobb County in the motions hearing, but we don't know what that is, and I certainly don't want to wait until it's already put before the jury to then make an objection. We need to see it first before something is displayed before the jury. Certainly anything that he's done on his iPad isn't in evidence, hasn't been offered as a demonstrative aid. So I think out of an abundance of caution, we need to know what's about to be shown to the jury.
Judge, this was already played for them in Cobb County. They've seen this exact thing. This is no different. And by the way, that evidence is already in. That panoramic image is already in evidence. All we're talking about is how you view it. It's no different than if we tendered a recording and put it in a laptop. You don't have to tender the laptop. In addition to the recording, you just get the evidence in. Or displaying a photograph on a document camera or something like that, or even plugging it in on a Mondo pad. This is just a means for displaying the panoramic image. It's nothing more than that. So that evidence is already in by way of 916. And also the hard drive that's got the electronic version of it.
If I may, Judge, this is really no different than what the state objected to and was so concerned about, was actually going to the same website live in front of the jury as the same web address that was in evidence. I understand that Mr. Evans is saying, well, this is the same thing that was done in Cobb at the motions hearing, but nobody had any way of knowing that until I made an objection, and that's why, out of an abundance of caution, I think it's only fair to know what's about to be put before the jury.
Well, I think now you do. You know, we'll take a break and you can look at that, but I don't have a problem with the technology they're using. So I'm going to permit it over your objection.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know you're accepting my ruling. Now you've got time to review
I
that.
appreciate that.
Certainly. All right, let's take a little break. I've sent them off and we'll let them have a break.
We won't do it there yet. We'll just do it on
That's even better.
That's funny. That's funny.
with no instruction from the court, then the jury is allowed to be left with the impression that there was a frivolous objection made by the defense, and that over the break it was exactly confirmed, just as the state suggested, that this was the same piece of evidence and now we're moving on. That affects the fairness and the credibility of our presentation and our representation of Mr. Harris. So I would ask the court for a curative instruction, and at the very least, a direction for the state to lay the proper foundation for what is about to be shown, and make very, very clear that what is about to be shown is not what was previously shown to the court and defense counsel earlier this year.
What was shown to the court earlier this year was the first scan of the same vehicle, same car seat, same driver's seat, but technically they are correct, and they brought it to my attention that this is a new scan. My intention was to correct that in front of the jury and actually apologize to the defense and point out that they were correct with that. And Mr. Lumpkin and Mr. Rodriguez did bring that to my attention. It's the same vehicle, same car seat, but they're technically correct. It was a second scan, and I feel like I need to correct that and apologize in front of the jury, so I'll do so.
Oh, I think that's a reasonable solution. I think it's better than me saying something. Actually. Anything else? Sure.
It's all right for the jury. Please be seated.
Judge, let me start by saying that I misspoke about something, and defense counsel pointed that out to me during the break, so I want to apologize to Mr. Rodriguez and apologize in front of the jury. Technically speaking, what was shown to the defense in Cobb County could not have been this new scan because we hadn't scanned it yet. What was shown to them was a prior scan of the same vehicle, same car seat, same doll, using the same image software. But technically speaking, what we're about to show is a new scan that was taken down here. So I apologize for that misstatement, Mr. Rodriguez. It wasn't unintentional.
Thank you.
That being said, we have provided this to them in discovery. I believe I tendered states 930. I don't recall. Did you receive that, Judge? Into evidence? I'm going to re-tender 930 out of my abundance of caution.
Well, it's an evidence.
Okay.
It's an evidence.
And
It
now,
is over objection.
now that we've done that, I want to ask you, can you please bring up your software that you created so that we can view states 916 and 930 using the iViewer 360. Now start there. You can actually maneuver through the 360, correct? And there's a little bit of a lag here.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain why we have a little bit of a lag?
Sure. So in order to project this onto the display, we're using something called AirPlay. And so we both have to be on the same wireless network. The wireless is a little slow in this room. And so when I move my iPad, there's a small amount of lag time or delay between how it's displayed on the screen.
I want to do some threshold things for what's now being displayed for the jury. And that is the photographic image 916, but
Yes,
on
sir.
your viewer, is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. First, can you pan down so that you're able to show that void and explain what that is?
Yes. So this is the void that's directly below the scanner. The distortion is caused because basically, if you think of this, we have a spherical image around, like putting a picture on a balloon. And then when you unwrap it, you end up with that distortion down at the bottom.
Okay.
So that's what that is.
Will you raise that up now, your iPad, so that we're able to view, and we'll let the lag catch up out of the windshield. All right. Now, can you pan a little to the left so we can see outside the driver's side door from this scanned image? I'm going to do this using this streaming feature first, and then I'm actually going to get you to get down with the iPad so that you can show them real time without the lag. I now want to ask you to pan over to the right side so we can see what's depicted in State's Exhibit 930. And just so we can show the full functionality of the software, unlike a human, it actually spins full 360. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So are you actually capable to see the back headrest?
Yes, sir.
Because this turns, unlike the human head, can turn all the way around, correct?
Correct.
So why don't you show? Okay. And then can you also see the ceiling, since we've done the floorboard, we should do the ceiling as well. And we'll let that lag catch up. Now what I'm going to ask you to do is to step down. And one of the features on this iPad is that you can actually, using the software, you can actually scroll, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you move the iPad, the image will move too, correct?
Yes.
Let's go to State's Exhibit 930. I think I just turned on C. You can put the iPad down now. I want to ask you some questions about 930 and what the photographic option of the scanner captured using State's 930. You can step down with me. Start on this side of the jury box.
So what's visible here in the color captured image?
What's that?
We see the passenger seat, we see the photographic scale that's been placed there.
Is this the passenger floorboard?
Yes, sir.
What's that?
That's the child car seat that was placed by Detective Grinstead.
What's that?
That's the life-size male model.
For the benefit of this side of the jury box, what's that I'm pointing at?
That's the floor of the Tucson SUV,
What's that I'm pointing at?
the passenger seat, horizontal portion,
What's that?
child car seat,
What's that?
life-size male model.
You take your seat. I think that's all I have, Judge.
Ross,
Thank you. Mr. Dustin, you are in no way offering an opinion of what Ross Harris saw or what he could have seen on June the 18th, 2014.
No, sir, I was not there.
I mean, just to be clear, the sight lines that we have, those are representations of what your scanner could see.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And what your scanner could see depends on where it's placed,
Yes, sir, that's correct.
right? What items are placed within the scanner's view,
Yes, sir.
what items are not placed within the scanner's view.
I'm sorry?
Well, let me put it this way. The way objects are situated
Yes, sir.
at the time that you make the scan
Yes.
is what your finished product is going to show.
I think I understand the question. So if I understand, ma'am?
Of course.
I think if I understand the question, you're saying that it's a static capture at that moment in time, whatever the scanner sees as it rotates.
And that's what I was looking for, static.
Okay.
You gave us an example of the accuracy of the Faro scanner just in this courtroom.
Yes,
Right?
sir.
And when you did the scan of this courtroom, the positioning of objects in the courtroom were static, right?
Correct.
Okay. If you were asked, for example, just as Mr. Evans did from this part of the courtroom, if you were asked to capture sight lines of a juror that is seated in one of these seats, how would you go about setting up that scene?
What I would do to, for instance, whomever of the jurors, what we would do is we would get your approximate eye level, and then we would place the device in that location and try to perform a scan from there. Alternatively, you might be able to pick a point off the floor and elevate it to a certain distance and approximate it.
Okay.
But ideally, what you would do is you would try to approximate the height of the viewer.
And the ideal level of accuracy for you is what?
I'm not sure I understand the
Okay.
question. As far as you're talking about the location of the scanner head,
Sure.
I would say ideal level of accuracy is going to be within a half of an inch, maybe an inch.
Within half of an inch. So,
Depends on what I'm trying to do with it.
I see. If, for example, a juror is standing,
Yes, sir?
you would want the height of that individual, right?
Yes, sir?
And just given the height of an individual doesn't necessarily give you an accurate measurement for where that individual's eyes are, right?
That's correct.
Because our eyes are located differently upon our face,
That's correct.
right? And the position of the person that's standing, if they're slouched or if they're leaning or if they're leaning forward or leaning backwards, correct?
That's correct.
Those are variables. Now, if someone is seated, simply their height doesn't fully give you all of the information that you would need to accurately establish the sight line of that individual,
Unless you measured that specific individual, I think that's a fair statement.
right? Because people's torsos are different.
Correct.
Two people that might be 6 feet tall might have different lengths in torso and different lengths in legs.
I think that's fair.
And especially when we're talking about sight lines of an individual that's seated in a chair, they might be sitting differently. They might be leaning back in their chair, correct?
Correct.
When you were asked to develop some scans and some scenes of this case, originally you did some work starting way back in July of 2014, correct?
I think we may have actually done some in June, but yes, end of June, first part of July, yes, sir.
Okay. And in the summer of 2014, you were asked to map the scene of a Home Depot parking lot, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You were asked to map the vehicle that these jurors saw yesterday.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And then you created a scene where you placed you merged those two scans, right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
I'm picking up on the lingo I'm trying.
Doing fine.
You merge those two scans so that you can create what we already saw, like a flyover video,
Yes, sir, that's correct.
right? And during voir dire, or earlier this morning when I was asking you some questions, we talked about the model that you created.
Yes, sir.
Right? And you positioned a model within that merged scan,
That's correct.
right? So that whoever is looking at the software can fly over and see the scene with those objects in place, the
That's
car
correct.
and the parking lot with the model. Okay? And the placement of those objects, the vehicle, the car seat within the vehicle, because at the time that you did those scans, there was a car seat placed inside the vehicle, correct?
Which time?
The first set of scans in 2014.
Yes, that's correct.
And you did not place the car seat in the vehicle.
Did not.
Your understanding was that Detective Stoddard placed the car seat in the vehicle.
I believe he did, from best I can recall.
Okay. Or was it Detective Grimstead?
I don't recall Detective Grimstead, if he placed it the first time or not. I'm sorry, I just don't recall.
Okay, that's all right. You have indicated a desire to be accurate. You came back after starting your testimony yesterday, and it probably irked you a little bit that you had testified that what was it, the speed, was it speed of light?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you were off, or you misspoke, perhaps.
Yes, sir.
And you felt compelled to bring that up yourself and make it right.
Yes, sir.
Right? Let me just take a look so that we can be accurate. Let me hand you this report here. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Well, will you take a look at your report and let me know when you have found the source of the car seat placement in your first set of scans from 2014?
Is there a specific page?
Have you seen where the placement of the car seat?
No, that's what I'm asking. Do you have a specific page?
That is a copy of your report that you created for
It
the
is?
first set of scans in 2014.
Yes, sir.
Well, do you recall speaking to me over the phone in April of this year?
I do.
If you had told me in April of 2016 that Detective Stoddard was replaced items and was the source of information for the positioning of objects in your scan, would that be accurate?
I think that's accurate. I believe that's That's what I believe to be true. Believed. That was on the very first scans, I believe. I know for sure it was not me.
Correct.
I'm not sure what the
Well, to the best of your recollection, Detective Stoddard was who provided you with the data, okay, the placement of the vehicle. I mean, the placement of the car seat in the vehicle. Excuse me.
As best I can recall. Like I said, I just know for sure it was not me.
And when you created the scans in 2014, you didn't actually take the Hyundai Tucson back to Home Depot and place it in that parking spot, correct?
We did not.
Okay, you did a scan of the vehicle, and then you merged the two scans of the parking lot and the vehicle. So you kind of virtually put them at the same scene,
That's correct.
okay? And the measurements for the model that you created
Yes, sir.
to replicate Mr. Ross Harris,
Yes, sir.
that information was given to you by Detective Stoddard,
Yes, sir.
okay? And the model that you created was 6'3",
That's correct.
correct?
Judge, I think I need to raise an objection. You know, the defense objected pretty strenuously to an item of evidence that they're now getting into, and we specifically articulated weren't going to present to the court in large part because of their objection. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding, is there some strategic reason why we would be getting into that area?
I'm certainly not the person to ask.
Well, I mean, I'll object to relevance since it hasn't been presented to the jury.
Judge, it is in evidence. Mr. Evans said that he wasn't going to play a portion of what's on the hard drive, but the hard drive and all of its contents were admitted over objection.
All right. You can proceed.
And so, the information about Mr. Harris's height was provided to you by Detective Stoddard.
I believe it was over a phone call, perhaps. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you also did a panoramic photograph similar to the one that you created 2 weeks ago,
Yes, sir. That's correct.
where you positioned the tripod
Yes, sir.
in the driver's seat,
Yes, sir.
correct? And the goal there was to replicate the sight line of Mr. Ross Harris,
No, it's to replicate my sight line.
or your sight line.
Well, because I was the person we used.
Okay. And the decision was made to replicate your sight line because you're also 6'3"-ish, is what you testified to, right?
Yes, sir.
And so the belief was to replicate your sight line would be to replicate Mr. Harris's sight line.
I don't know if that was the belief, but that was the method that we used.
Okay.
I was the closest one to his height.
To Mr. Harris.
Yes, sir.
And when you positioned yourself in the vehicle in 2014, the way that Detective Stoddard confirmed the accuracy of the sight level to try and replicate Mr. Harris's was to just basically ballpark it and just look and then give you the thumbs up, correct?
Effectively, what he did was, I sat in the driver's seat. Detective Stoddard positioned himself so that he could view my location. Did not move. I placed the scanner in that same position he told me elevate it, move it, whatever, adjust it, so that it was close enough, and then he said that's good.
And you had to exit the vehicle in order to place the tripod in the driver's seat, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, and so before you exited the vehicle and before you placed the tripod in the driver's seat, Detective Stoddard didn't take a measuring tape and keep it at the location where your eye level was in the car seat, correct?
Did not.
Okay.
I got to object as a relevance, that scan has not even been shown to the jury. We're not talking about what happened in 2014. This is the 2016 scan that was just done a couple of weeks ago with Detective Grimstead, so it's not relevant.
Letter of objection.
Do you have that panoramic image pulled up on this computer where you could access it quickly?
Which one?
From the first group of photographs taken in 2014?
In there?
Do you mind stepping down, please?
That's a different paragraph.
And I'm showing you what's been admitted as demonstrative A, State's Exhibit 295. And there's your
Yes.
initials or signature there. And the date is April 4th, 2016, correct?
Yes, sir.
You'll plug that up.
Actually, yeah.
I think you just need to unplug it, Mr. Rodriguez.
Okay, thank you.
You do it right here. Either one.
Okay. Excellent. All right, if you will go to the panoramic image that you took in 2014.
Do you recall where it was?
Yes, if you back up one more. I believe it'll be iGear 360 images.
All right, you want to look at the image.
Yes, please. The panoramic photo that you looked at. Great. All right. And so, similar to the panoramic image that you took 2 weeks ago, you had the tripod placed in the driver's seat, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And when you took this photograph, okay, we see a Home Depot bag here with light bulbs inside of it.
It was a bag, I'm not sure what was in it.
Okay. We see the child car seat here.
Yes, sir.
This is a doll, correct? And you can see the legs of the doll, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. You can see that the handle of this car seat is, it appears to be touching at least the passenger seat, almost as if it's in between the two seats.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. And the level of the lens,
Yes,
the
sir.
height of the lens, was ballparked, confirmed by Detective Stoddard.
Yes, sir.
And if we'll go back to the panoramic image that you took in this scan.
Yeah.
And I said October 2016. The panoramic photograph that Mr. Evans spoke to you about. And we see here on the new panoramic image that the car seat is not wedged up against the passenger seat, correct?
That's correct.
There's a space,
Yes, sir.
right? And I think one of the photographs actually captures that space. Mr. Dessman, if you don't mind, please. All right. States 916 is what's blown up on the Mondo, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then a close-up is states 930.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. Is there a way to focus in on what is depicted here in states 930?
Yeah.
Sure. You want to be accurate. Can you get any closer?
Actually, yeah, because that's, we actually did a screen capture from within the software.
Oh, great. So you can actually go straight to 930, right?
Yes.
Would you do that, please? Are we just waiting on it, or okay? While we're waiting on it to load, if you don't mind, just stepping in front of the jury with me. Oh, okay, okay. Now you get to that part. Great.
So let me do it another way.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. So 930 is what we had pulled up on the big screen.
Yes.
And this is the new panoramic image that you took, right? It's 2 weeks ago. And there is a gap, a space, between the handle of the car seat and the passenger seat.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right. Now, can we pull back and see the full view here of 916?
Sure.
The full panoramic view. Excellent. If you'll actually just pan back and have centered the car seat in the middle of the frame there. Great, thank you. All right. And if you recall, the first panoramic image that you took in 2014 based on Detective Stoddard's information, the doll, you could see the doll's legs, correct?
Yes, sir.
You can't see the doll's legs at all there.
That's correct. You can see his feet.
That's, I mean, you would agree that's a pretty significant difference and what can be seen based on one set of measurements and what can't be seen based on another.
I believe that the car seat there was an issue with the location of the car seat
Right.
the first time,
Right.
and so obviously the car seat's going to be in a different location.
Right. The car seat was moved. That's your
Car seat,
understanding.
car seat was in two different positions in the two scans.
That's right. Okay. And Detective Stoddard supplied the information for the measurements and placement of the car seat during the first photograph.
I believe that's true.
Okay. But what we know, because this happened just 2 weeks ago, is Detective Stoddard had nothing to do with the information provided for the placement of that car seat.
As far as I know, that's true, yes.
He wasn't there.
Yes, sir.
He didn't confirm any measurements that were taken.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, we know that the tripod, well, we know that the estimated sight line, or the estimated height for Mr. Harris for the first set of scans in 2014 was 6'3".
Yes, sir.
The height that you used for these new scans just 2 weeks ago was for an individual that was 6'2", correct?
No, sir. No. For these? No, it was myself again,
Okay.
same.
Did you adjust the tripod down
No.
an inch to account for someone that was
I
6'2"?
positioned it where Mr. Grimstead told me to put it.
Okay.
I did what he told me.
Okay, did Detective Grimstead,
You'll have to ask him.
well, I think Detective Grimstead probably doesn't want to come back to testify. So let me ask you, since you were there with Detective Grimstead,
Yes, sir.
did he ask you to replicate the height or the positioning of Mr. Ross Harris in that driver's seat?
No, sir.
Okay, it was just, what can
I say?
What
Yes,
can
sir.
David Dustin see?
Yes, sir. Correct. May I sit? or-
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. Right. And you would agree that you would agree that this doll, that the head of the doll is not slouched to the left or slumped over at all, correct?
As based as what appears to be that way, no, sir. It does not appear to be slouched either direction.
Okay. Were you given? And this is the new photograph, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And so 2 weeks ago, were you given any information about what witnesses have testified to in relation, in regards to the positioning of Cooper Harris within the car seat?
No, sir.
Before you did this new photograph and these new scans 2 weeks ago, you were certainly prepared to testify that the first set of scans and the first photographs that you took fairly and accurately replicated the scene that you scanned, correct?
That's true. It was.
It fairly and accurately replicated the scene as it was staged for you, correct?
At the device, everything was placed. I did no positioning of the interior objects.
But you were asked to drive down to Glen County? Or did you fly?
Oh, I drove.
Okay. You're asked to drive down to perform new scans on a Saturday morning and on a Sunday, correct?
Yes, sir.
Just 2 weeks ago, in the middle of this trial, and you were asked to take new scans, new photographs of totally different positioning of objects in your scene.
The car seat was in a different location, I believe. If you would have asked me prior, I paid no attention to the location of the car seat other than what I needed to do to try to capture it.
And so as you sit here today, the images that that have been created, the scenes that have been created, they fairly and accurately depict the scene as it was staged for you this time, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But you can't offer an opinion if we're anywhere closer to how the car seat and what Mr. Harris may have seen back in 2014, correct?
I wasn't there, it's not my job.
But, I mean, part of your work is accident reconstruction mapping, correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. And in those kinds of cases, you're provided exact measurements and data from experts, correct?
Exact might be a stretch, but measurements, yes, sir.
They're certainly trained in the areas of accident reconstruction.
Correct.
And you're dealing with law enforcement. Okay?
Law enforcement and accident reconstruction is forensic engineering companies, yes, sir.
Okay. I mean, sometimes scientists, right?
Not that I recall.
Well, I think of engineers, I guess, as scientists, but engineers.
Yes, sir.
People that are very precise.
Most.
Most. Okay. And so when you're working on those kinds of cases, you're provided data that's been measured and investigated and really thoroughly looked at by these experts and engineers, correct?
Take the data that they give me and that's what I use.
Your function is not to correct mistakes that detectives or accident reconstructions may
No,
make.
sir, it's not my job.
You just set the scanner and capture what they put in front of you, right?
Effectively, yes.
Now, in this new scan, if you don't mind stepping down, can you show the jury the panned out full view of the panoramic image? States 916. All right, great, thank you. You would agree that this doesn't demonstrate all the human variables and the human condition of eyesight.
That's correct.
Humans cannot see 360 degrees.
That's right.
And in your field of study and in your work, you can't offer an opinion as to what is in someone's peripheral vision or what is in a human being's peripheral vision.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So when this scanner is, let's say, directed directly at the steering wheel, you can't offer an opinion as to how much of this panoramic image would be captured in a human being's peripheral vision.
Yes, sir.
Correct? But if you can focus on this rear view mirror here, please. You can't see the car seat, can you?
No, sir.
You can't see the legs of the doll,
No,
can
sir.
you? And this is in the new scan.
Correct.
This is with the better measurements, correct?
Correct.
And you'd agree, they're better.
Different measurements, whatever they are, but yes.
They're different measurements from the ones that we had up until 2 weeks ago.
Well, different car seat placement.
Yes. Okay. Now, if you'll go back to, the vantage point, your vantage point. that you were talking about with Mr. Evans. Here, okay? In order for you to have had the head of the doll in this car seat centered within your line of sight, you would have had to have been turning to the right, correct?
That's correct.
Similar to the motion that you may make when you're changing lanes and moving over, correct?
I would say that's true, yes, sir.
But again, when we're looking from your vantage point straight into the rearview mirror, you can't see that doll, can you?
No, sir.
I think that's all I have right now.
I have a few questions for you. The purpose for you coming down a couple weeks ago was to make sure that we get it precise, correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you agree to do that when we asked you to come and rescan the vehicle to make sure that we got the placement correct?
I'm sorry?
Did you agree to do that
Oh,
when we
yes,
asked
sir.
you, would you come down and make sure we
Absolutely.
got the placement correct?
Yes, sir.
And who was the first person to bring up the 2014 scans?
It was the
Objection relevance.
They just displayed the 2014 scans, so I think it's fair to a line of questioning for me to now ask about it.
I think so.
Okay. But now, who actually displayed that for the jury during your testimony here, the 2014 scans?
I did, well, we did for the defense.
Okay. I want to go to the 2014 versus the 2016 scans and do a comparison. Can you step down with me? Before we leave this scan, can you please pan over to the rear view mirror, Karen? All right. When you sat in this vehicle, did you make any adjustments to the rear view mirror?
No, sir.
What is depicted as you look in the rear view mirror from this vantage point? Can you actually see out the back window?
You can see the headrests on the back seat. You can see the rear window glass of the vehicle.
So this, what we're depicting here, that's actually a garage door from the back window, correct?
It is.
That was all visible from the scanner's height without you making any adjustments to the rear view mirror?
Correct.
Did you actually sit in this vehicle yourself?
I did.
Could you see out the rear of the vehicle using the rear view mirror?
Yes, sir.
And a little to the right. To the best you're able. Yeah. The line of sight captured in 9:30. Let me ask you some questions. When you sat inside this vehicle and looked to the right, could you see the floorboard?
Yes, sir.
When you sat in this vehicle, looked to the right, could you see the car seat? The passenger seat?
Yes.
When you sat in the vehicle and looked to the right, what did you see up here?
You could see the car seat and you could see the human model.
Could you see the car seat in your periphery as you sat in that seat too?
As I turned?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Let's minimize that and go to the 2014 scan, please.
The image?
Yeah, the 360 image. I am, indeed. And if you'll pan over to the rough approximation of the view of 9:30, if you will.
So this is just a photograph. It's not actually a scan.
Can you pull it up in the scan?
The scan?
Yeah,
And you want this scan later?
I do, so we can use that, the 360 view. 360 player to do that. Is that correct? Okay. All right. So there's no confusion. Okay. So there's no confusion. This is the 2014 scan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. 2014 scan, what's that?
Florida, Tucson,
What's that?
passenger seat.
What's that?
The view out the right window,
What's that?
car seat,
What's that?
and mail model.
Minimize that. Please. Go to the view depicted in 930.
In the scene top.
Yes. Scroll just a little bit. Okay. That's the rough scene depicted in 930, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
This is the 2016 scan.
Yes, sir.
Who placed the car seat for the 2016 scan?
Mr. Grimstead.
In your presence?
Yes.
Okay. And was I there too?
Yes.
Ask you some questions about the 2016 scan. What's that?
The floor of the Tucson,
What's that?
horizontal portion of the passenger seat,
What's that?
view out the right window,
What's that?
car seat,
What's that?
mail model.
You can take your seat. You were asked a question. If you were correct, on the 2014, you could see a little bit more of the legs of the doll, is that correct?
In the 2016 scan or 2014?
2014. 2014, the legs were more visible, would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. And in 2016, while you can't see the legs, you can still see the feet.
Yes.
What's this white object there?
Appears to be the foot with the inside of a sock.
Right. And that states 916. All right. Thank you. I think that's all I have.
Excuse me, request.
Mr. Dustin, when you sat in that seat, you knew that
Yes, sir.
there was a car seat there, right?
Yes, sir.
You knew that there was a model inside that car seat.
That's correct.
Fair to say, if you're looking for something, you can see it.
Sure. Yes.
And if you're not, you may not.
May not.
Even when we're looking for something, I mean, you're familiar with the phrase, even in Adairsville, if it had been a snake, it would have bitten me, right?
I've heard the term, yes, sir.
Yeah, you're looking for something, and then, gosh, it was right in front of me. And that's even if you're looking for something, right?
It's true. Yes, sir.
But here, when you sat in that seat, you knew that the model was inside that car seat, right?
Absolutely.
So when you were asked, could you see the male model when you were looking off to the right? Well, I mean, you remember knowing that the model was in that seat, right?
That's true.
You're familiar with confirmation bias, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you testified previously that you don't know how much of this panoramic image would actually appear within a human's periphery. Right?
That's correct.
You don't.
That's true. I do not know.
But based on your memory of having sat in that chair, knowing that the model was there, that's how you can remember when looking to the right. Yeah, I can see the doll.
That's difficult for me to answer because I never sat in there without the car seat in there, so I don't know.
The only memory you have is of the model inside that car seat, right? As far as you sitting in that vehicle, The only memory you have of seeing that model in the car seat, in the vehicle, was when you were sitting in there that day.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I've worked on the vehicle, so obviously I saw the doll in there from a variety of different locations.
I guess I was just following up on your answer that it was only based on your memory that you had only seen the model inside that car when you were in the car. Did I misunderstand your testimony?
I think so. I'm not sure we're not, I think we're a little out of phase here.
Okay.
Let's reboot. So what are your questions?
Let's read it. Well, let's just move on. You did a flyover, and you talked about it a little bit with Mr. Evans earlier. There was a decision to, at certain points in the flyover, to hide the roof, correct?
Correct.
I think that was your term, that
Yes, sir.
you hide it with a component of your software.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You'd agree during that portion of the flyover, it's not reality. It's not replicating what someone could see June
It's true.
18, 2014, correct?
Right.
And in fact, during certain portions of your scans, all the windows are rolled down when you're scanning the vehicle.
Correct.
All the windows are rolled down, right?
Yes, sir.
Like this photograph here, 904, 909 perhaps.
Yes, sir.
All the windows are down.
Correct.
If there were evidence that at the Home Depot parking lot, all the windows were up, you'd agree these images don't fairly and accurately depict the vehicle on June the 18th, 2014.
Other than just that the windows are down instead of up.
And you know, as you've scanned this vehicle, at no point does the roof come off, right?
That's correct.
So you agree that during portions of your video flyover where the roof is hidden, that's not a fair and accurate depiction of that vehicle in reality.
I think that's true.
And even on the new scans, we don't have the glare of the front windshield. There's no glare of the side windows, the front seat windows, correct?
Correct.
Those were hidden, correct?
The windows, the window glass, yes, it was removed, actually.
They're actually removed,
The glass,
the
yes.
glass was. Okay. And you would agree that during portions of, because they were removed, in all portions of your scene and the video of your scan, the flyover, because those windows have been removed, it's not a fair and accurate depiction of the vehicle in reality on June the 18th, 2014.
That's true. May I respond? So, I mean, it's just to show the spatial orientation of everything inside of the vehicle from a top view. That's the only reason that that's exposed. You notice we start with everything in place.
Right.
In fact, I even added glass to the rear portion dark so that it would not give that impression that you could see through clearly.
Right. You'd agree, and I think you said it yourself, you didn't want to give off the impression that you could see through the back window and the
Correct.
side windows.
Right.
However, though, you're aware that during the morning of June the 18th, 2014, there were people that were walking right up by that vehicle.
I don't know what they were doing.
You haven't been shown surveillance footage?
No, sir. Not that I recall.
What about photographs of the vehicle from June the 18th?
I have photographs, I've seen photographs of the processing. I've seen photographs from the final, by Uncle Mattio's restaurant. I've seen, had a photograph from a surveillance camera.
Okay.
Single photograph.
One photograph.
One photograph.
Okay. Does that one photograph have a person near
No, sir.
Hyundai Tucson? No?
No, sir.
So even when you did the first scans, Detective Stoddard didn't show you any surveillance footage or
Not that I
still
recall.
shot surveillance?
Not that I recall.
And even when the DA's office called you back to do a new set of scans with new measurements and new placement, you still weren't shown video surveillance and photographs, correct?
Not that I recall.
You remember testifying earlier this year in a motions hearing where the best evidence of a scene are photographs.
No, actually, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's what I said. I said photographs are a component, if I recall correctly.
Well, your decision to place these black frames in place of where the rear windows and the back hatch window is, you didn't want to give off the impression that anyone could see through or see into the vehicle.
I ran it by District Attorney Evans. I said I have the option, because I actually have I've got a different 3D model of the vehicle. It's something in the same software that we use for the character. So I have a full 3D model of a Tucson. And so what I did was I took that window glass, and then I imported just that window glass into the scan data so that I could place that in the area of the rear windows. And Mr. Evans responded saying, can you turn it on or off? I said, yes. He said, then we'll leave it in.
You wanted it on.
He wanted it in with the option of turning it on or off. Was what I recall.
Now, in having this discussion with Mr. Evans about how to set the parameters and stage the scene for your new scans, were you made aware that throughout the morning there were people walking by the vehicle that could absolutely have looked into the vehicle and seen if they wanted to?
Call for speculation.
I think I already responded. I don't know any of those details.
You didn't know that was the evidence in court in this trial?
Sorry?
You didn't know that? You didn't know that was the evidence when you were called back down here to do new scans in the middle of trial?
No.
If that were true, okay, I know you weren't here, okay, and I know that you weren't made aware of that, but if that were true, you would agree that your scene, isn't really illustrating that evidence, that testimony, correct?
I think that's true.
Nothing further, Judge.
You can step in. Approach.
At this time, Your Honor, the state rests.
Ladies and gentlemen, the state has rested their case. There are matters now that I need to take up in preparation for the next steps of the trial. It's a good time for you all to take a break, and then there's lunch waiting for you so that we can get ready to resume the trial after the lunch break. Close notepads, open mind, no conversation. You'll have a very good break and lunch.
Let's all rise for the jury, please. Please watch your step going down.
Oops, literally. All right, let's do what we need to do so that we can get ready for this afternoon.
Without going into any detail, Judge, at this time, I want to go ahead and renew my prior objections and prior motions from this trial for the record.
Yes, sir. I'll let you do that.
And for the record, I'm going to, at this time, move for directed verdict on all 8 counts on the basis that the state has not proven any of these counts beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm going to exercise the right not to make any specific additional argument on any of them at this time, but I'm not waiving anything here.
So, the defendant has a motion for directed verdict as to all counts of the bill of indictment. And you can exercise your right not to argue those matters at this time. Is there anything else for the defense before we get ready for after lunch for you to, if I can speak, for you to be ready to begin to present your evidence?
No, the court's aware that we've intended to put up a case, and we're gonna call witnesses, and I've made the court aware that we're gonna go ahead, we have 2 witnesses ready today. I've let Mr. Boring know who those 2 witnesses are. I don't think we'll take the entirety of the afternoon.
I understand.
But-
We've had that conversation, and you've made me aware.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Of which I'm very appreciative. Well, I have a motion in limine concerning one of the witnesses, Detective Murphy. Is that one of the people you anticipate calling?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen the motion in limine?
Mr. Lumpkin, I believe he's gonna question that witness, and I believe he has that motion.
Can we go ahead and do that before we break?
You prepared for that?
No, ma'am, we have been in the midst of trial. I'd like to have a chance to actually review the motion, look at
I
the
have a problem with that.
We do it right after lunch, if that works before.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Is there anything else for the defense?
Not at this time.
Is there anything else for the state?
Just we'd ask you to deny directed verdict. We believe the evidence has been such that it should be allowed to go to the jury on all counts.
All right, I'll do that. Let's come back at 1 o'clock. We will start with the motion in limine concerning Detective Murphy, and then we'll proceed into the defendant's evidence. Everybody have a good lunch.
We'll bring this one just in case. You want it? It's up to you. You want it written? In case Ash needs it. No, from the motion here, I thought I might need to. We do about 3 times a week, so I'm used to, yeah, not used to it. It's like secondhand to me.
Oh, you need to ask who and all they get fed. Not ask Biley the courthouse, because I don't want to be bigger than the store. I don't want to be bigger than you.
I was 178 when I came from.
Where is your, started, oh man,
260 now.
I don't even know when I was here what it's gonna be.
Well, not, no, because I'm a grown jackal, but I've been here. But I prefer Sam House and Jack House. Sam House and Jack House probably.
Those are the best.
These three are the best I've ever had anywhere.
Yeah, oh my gosh, yeah, it's great. It's not really.
Yeah, we got some good barbecue at home.
A lot of different types too, different styles, you know.
Huh?
A lot of different styles and stuff too. You know, like.
Well, I had put, last week, we had barbecue, we had, air Camden County style. No, I think it's a real traditional, Vidalia onions, the capers and the pepper brine there, barely cooking the shrimp with the shrimp towels in there, and the towels are wrong, the shells, the first and cook them. We have the butterfly shrimp for just a flash.
So the shells look kind of, you got flavor to it.
If you put the shells in with the shrimp and cook the shrimp, the flavor goes up exponentially.
Yeah. Are those two rooms key, do I need keys?
We don't have keys. In the town for life.
Okay.
Get away from y'all, that barbecue, question of that.
And honestly, we've been having
We just need the
all
witness
day.
rooms now.
Oh, do you? Okay.
So,
There you go.
those, do we need keys to those two rooms?
No, I'm locking it all down. You put a witness in there, what it is?
We'll be putting witnesses in
I
there.
don't know if the state still have something in this room.